Hey folks, Jordan with TYT Politics, back in my old kitchen. It's actually my parents' kitchen. I am reporting from home. It's Passover, so celebrating that with my family. Happy Passover to my Jewish friends and family. I just did a video on YouTube, and I wanted to do a video on my friend Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, who failed epically in the 2016 presidential election. Is probably going to run again, either primarying Donald Trump or running again in 2024, still a fairly young dude. I think Ted Cruz is probably one of the biggest frauds the United States has in the Senate. I think he has painted himself as a Tea Party outsider, when in reality he is an establishment stooge who takes big money from Wall Street, the healthcare industry, and elsewhere. And I think not enough people actually have exposed Ted Cruz for what he is. Plenty to talk about in terms of corporate Democrats. However, I'm not going to ignore Republican corruption either. So, Ted Cruz. Well, Mr. Cruz did a fundraiser over the weekend. He did a fundraiser. Dozens of protesters lined Peach Avenue in Cleveland Saturday for the arrival of high-ranking Republicans at a fundraiser hosted by the San Jacinto County Republican Party. Driving past signs and banners criticizing their politics, Senator Ted Cruz, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and U.S. Congressman Kevin Brady arrived to find hundreds of Republican supporters inside the Cleveland Senior Citizen Center, where the gala went on as planned. Okay? The protesters, who came from all around the greater Houston area and had disparate concerns, say the lack of response is exactly what they expected. Quote, "I've been trying to get an appointment to see Senator Cruz since December 20th, 2016. I was told to make an appointment through a scheduler and he would hear our concerns. I never heard back from his office," said Liz McConnell, a paralegal from Houston. He says he represents us all, but he won't hear us. I understand he can't vote to please everyone, but he needs to hear the stories. One second. He needs to hear the stories from these people who have open heart surgery scheduled to replace a pacemaker battery in the fall, and they don't know if they will have health care at that time or what it will look like. And of course, Ted Cruz has been leading the charge to get rid of that, tyrannical Obamacare, because we know, the solution is to give the keys to the kingdom back to the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical companies. That's going to give unlimited freedom, which is Ted Cruz's maximum goal in life, unlimited freedom. So, Ted Cruz won't get back to constituents who don't know if they're going to be covered for things like open heart surgery. So, McConnell says she isn't worried about her own health care plan, as it is provided through her employer, but she fears for people who might lose their health insurance if Obamacare is repealed and replaced by the current health care bill. Quote, "I understand there are problems with the healthcare system as it stands, but fix it. Don't repeal and replace with something worse," she said. "The state of our healthcare system in this country is appalling. I understand Senator Cruz is going to vote how he votes, but I think he owes the people to look them in the eye and hear their stories first." So this is Teddy Cruz, who came up on that Tea Party outsider, throw out all the bums, Tea Party ticket, but can't be bothered to speak with constituents there in Texas. By the way, Cruz is up for re-election next year, which I'm going to get to. Bennett and other protesters laughed when asked if they were paid to take part in the protests, which has been rumored by the Trump administration and Republican lawmakers. Quote, "We are not paid. I wouldn't do this for pay," she said. "I am doing this because I'm concerned about my grandchildren." Cruz says 2017 could be a blockbuster year for the GOP. Inside the center, the protesters did not go unnoticed by Cruz and Patrick, as they referenced them in their comments to the crowd. Cruz joked that the easiest way for law enforcement to disperse the protesters was to tell them to get a job if they remained. After drawing laughs from the crowd, Cruz turned to a more serious topic, such as two important pieces of legislation he wrote that Donald Trump signed into law. Quote, "In the last 3 weeks, I have been privileged to have two pieces of legislation that I authorized signed into law by the President of the United States. The first was NASA Authorization Bill. Starting a year ago, I began working with Democrats and Republicans to bring them together for the Authorization Bill. We did that without knowing who the next president would be, and I promise you a year ago, I did not know it would be Donald Trump. What I did know is that past presidential transitions by the Democratic or Republican have been bad for NASA. Yes, so that's the pressing issue that we need Ted Cruz working on, making sure NASA and the space mission is in full blast and has the necessary funds. How about fixing planet Earth here before you focus on NASA, Senator Cruz? The second bill signed into law has allowed states to require, as a condition of unemployment benefits, drug testing. A conservative favorite. Ted Cruz, of course, is for it. According to Cruz, his second priority is reforming Obamacare. We have to replace that train wreck that is Obamacare. I'm convinced we can and will get it right. I could go on. He basically gave his same old speech about repealing and replacing Obamacare and the like. He has no plan. And ironically, I don't really think Ted Cruz wants to repeal and replace Obamacare for personal freedom and, making sure that all Americans have choice and the tyrannical socialist government doesn't control their health care. I think it's about the money. Let's see some of Ted Cruz's biggest donors during the 2016 campaign, shall we? So, 2016 campaign, which he lost in the Republican primary, his biggest donations came from retired, which could mean anything, retired individuals. This could be hedge fund managers, that could be former healthcare officials, big oil executives, who the hell knows. Got nearly $14 million from the category retired. Real estate was number 2, over $9 million he got from the real estate industry. Number 3 was Republicans and conservatives, over $4 million. Number 4, health professionals, over $1.8 million he got from the healthcare industry. Oh, so healthcare industry meaning big pharma, big pharmaceuticals, healthcare equipment companies, the whole nine. That's who Ted Cruz is getting his money from. And guess what? Big pharmaceutical companies, if they could get rid of Obamacare and go back to the way it was, oh, would they love it. They'd love it. If they could go back to the wild, wild west where Big Pharma runs everything, they'd be ecstatic. They loved the failed Trump care, which was a big BJ to the pharmaceutical company. So Cruz, Mr. Personal Freedom himself, got $1,837,000 from the healthcare industry. And number 5, he got from Wall Street nearly $1.8 million. And then he gets lawyers and law firms, which are mostly business law firms, at $1.7 million. Oil and gas, he got almost $1.5 million. So this Tea Party outsider who, loves personal freedom, loves it. Apparently, he wants to deprive people of health care to pay back his donors. And ironically, his opposition to Obamacare and his vows to repeal it and replace it probably had something to do with his very, very big fundraising haul. Numbers just came out for the first quarter, which was January, February, and March of 2017. Ted Cruz raised about $1.738 million, so a little over $1.7 million in the first 3 months of 2017. He now has $5.2 million across those 3 committees, and $4.8 million of that is in the Senate re-election account. Senator Cruz's ongoing fundraising strength is reflective of the effective and principled leadership he has displayed in the U.S. Senate, said his spokesperson. Yes, very principled leadership, the kind that funnels money from healthcare companies and Wall Street, and then turns around and says, I'm out there for the American flag and patriotism and freedom. So I prefer Republicans or corporate Democrats that are just transparently corrupt, not the kind that wrap themselves in the flag and patriotism and, bringing America back from the abyss. We need to take our country back. Yes, well, if you want to take the country back, maybe you should stop continuing to giving it to the people that hijacked it, which is Wall Street, big oil, healthcare, big pharma. Ted Cruz is no champion of personal freedom. He's no champion of personal responsibility. He is a establishment politician masquerading around as a Tea Party patriot. So you might say, well, what's the news here, Jordan? This is old news. We know this about Ted Cruz. Well, we can't only focus on bought-off corporate Democrats, because when you do that, it by extension kind of makes it seem like Republicans are somewhat even or better. No. Ted Cruz was one of the politicians that literally stopped aid from going to Flint for quite some time. He, along with Senator Mike Lee, who he's buddy-buddy with, stopped aid from going to Flint, Michigan. He's done a lot of other very, very sadistic and outright scandalous things to try to stop other communities from getting relief money, trying to control women and shutting down Planned Parenthood and other things. Ted Cruz is beyond just a bought-off Republican politician. He has done things that directly can harm individuals and, in some cases, depriving life or death aid that is needed. So that's Ted Cruz. And he's up for re-election in 2018. And yeah, Texas is pretty Republican as they come. But I think what we've started to see in this country is the populist outrage, the populist outcry is very, very thick. That's why a reality TV used car salesman was able to convince and con a lot of people that he was going to bring back their jobs and fight, Wall Street and fight those people, getting away with murder. He said Goldman Sachs and pharmaceutical companies are getting away with murder. Republicans liked this language. Of course, they like the other stuff, Hillary's evil and all this stuff, but there is a populist outrage against frauds and against establishment politicians. So it's important to point out that Ted Cruz is fraudulent. He is an establishment politician. He's taking money from the same institutions that he rails against. For God's sakes, during the election, he took $13 million from Robert Mercer. Robert Mercer is one of the biggest donors in the United States. After Ted Cruz moved out, Robert Mercer switched to Donald Trump. He's a gigantic hedge fund billionaire. The family originally backed Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, a more traditional conservative, but one who, like Mr. Trump, is disliked by much of the party establishment. During the early phase of the campaign, Mr. Mercer donated $13 million to a super PAC supporting Mr. Cruz. In doing so, he broke with many peers in the elite donor world who looked to candidates like Jeb Bush or Senator Marco Rubio. Well, why did he donate to Ted Cruz? The Mercers maintain close control over the group's purse strings, installing Miss Conway to oversee the group. That's Kellyanne Conway, who worked for Ted Cruz originally. Miss Conway to oversee the group and coordinate with several other pro-Cruz groups. An unusual move for a super PAC. During the Republican primary, the group ran ads questioning Mr. Trump's conservative credentials, hoping to outflank Mr. Trump. But the Mercers moved to support Mr. Trump after he won the nomination. They were helped in part, according to a person who asked for anonymity to describe the family's thinking, by Mr. Trump's growing emphasis on traditional conservative ideas such as tax cuts. And the family broke with Mr. Cruz in highly public fashion after his speech at the Republican convention when the Texas senator refused to endorse Trump. So basically, Ted Cruz took $13 million from a hedge fund magnate who wanted his tax cuts further. Yes, personal responsibility and personal freedom. That's what Ted Cruz is about. So that's the story on Cruz. We'll be able to donate. The overall numbers are out for the first quarter, but as of Saturday, we get the information on the individual donors, and then later on, we'll see which industries he got the most donations from. So I'll follow up reporting on Ted Cruz's donors, Chuck Schumer's donors, all of the donors, because we need to know where are corporate bought-off Democrats getting their money from, where are the Republican bigwigs who are masquerading around as Tea Party patriots when they're really establishment shills are getting their money from. Thank you for watching. You can follow me at Jordan Chariton on Twitter and youtube.com/TYTpolitics.